Okay, so expansion, we talked about one already, prefix. If you have a really huge prefix, what would it be called? On the grand scale now.
Introduction.
Introduction, yeah. So if it's huge, we'll call it an introduction. All right, what if I have something at the end here?
Suffix.
Suffix. Some people use the word extension. That works too. It's like, you know, like if you have one of those fake lightsabers that my kids have, they extend out. Or you know the wand, telescoping things that telescope out, that you extend them, you stretch them out. So some end of it goes, and stretches out. So that's rather evocative to think of it as an extension. It's something that stretches that phrase out at the tail end of it. Okay, now if it's a huge suffix, what do you call it?
Coda.
Coda, that's right. Coda. If it's kind of intermediate, it's not huge, it's not super small, you say coda. Yeah, we use that word a lot in studied form. Now you can use suffix for any size. You can use prefix and suffix for any size. It doesn't matter. It doesn't imply small. But if you want to imply big, you can, instead of saying prefix, you can say introduction. So that does mean something. Okay, what about in the middle? Can you expand that into internal? Mm-hmm. Now that's a huge category, internal expansion. There's a bunch. So let's just get some ways. How could you manage to do that?
Repetition, echo, or sequential repetition.
Good. All kinds of repetition in there can elaborate on your thought and sound very extraneous to the main gist of what you're saying. You mentioned echoes. Somebody just brought a piece to me today, Bach piece, and Bach actually put some dynamic markings in there. Wow, Baroque though it be, and there's echo going on, and then she decided to add a bunch more echo. And in some of those cases, it makes a great deal of sense because one of them was a sequence situation, and she had worked in some echoes of her own making. But the one that Bach marked was one where it was literally the same music again, and so it made sense to do it a different way. So you're not doing it forte twice, but you're making an echo out of it. That's echo repetition. So maybe I should put it like this. Echo repetition. Echoes, echo. Okay, echo repetition, and you mentioned some other kinds too.
Sequential.
Yeah, sequential. So, is that how you spell that? That T does not look right.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Sequential. Repetition again, but just like that sequence we found before, it moves it to another pitch level. Okay. Repetition, that's a big one. What are some other things that we could do?
Oh, like fermata.
And all these things, there's fermata and there's composed out.
A deceleration.
Deceleration. Is that how he says it? Composed out and deceleration?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll just put deceleration in here and cover them all.
Are they still considered internal though?
Yeah.
They don't have to be. They can be. Sometimes they happen outside here.
Okay.
But this is one potential way to do internal expansion. Okay, we'll see that these techniques can be used elsewhere too, but some of them can. Like if you have an echo that echoes the cadence, okay, that's a suffix. But you can have an echo repetition in the middle of a phrase too. And then it's going to be internal.
For some
Okay, so
reason.
deceleration can come in a lot of different ways. You mentioned the fermata. And that's kind of a simple one, but you could have the cadenza-like thing going on right before the cadence, in which case that's a lot of elaboration going on that's inside the phrase because it's before the cadence. Delaying a cadence means it's internal. I like that composed out, retardando, I think.
Mhm.
Probably because I've been looking at a lot of Brahms, as usual. I love Brahms, so I spend a lot of time with him. And he likes to stretch things out. So it's not just that he's written retard. Sometimes he does both. He writes retard, and then he makes note values get larger. Quarter, dotted quarter, half, so that it's built in. Even if you were to be very strict with your tempo, you would still slow down because the note values are getting longer. Maybe the chords are stretching out, becoming longer as well. That's all composed out retardando. It's built in to the score. Other comments?
You don't talk about
Elongation.
deceptive cadence.
Good. Now, deceptive cadence is a way of delaying. So there are these delaying tactics. Delayed cadence. Now, I don't think he uses these headings, but I think we can group some of these things under it. So, there are lots of ways of delaying cadences, and that's a big one right there. Deceptive motion. Which is just moving to 6 from a 5. So 5 to 6, major or minor, either one, but that motion. Maybe you got a cadential 6/4, you're ready for closure, and then whoa, we go to 6, and you know you're not done yet. Boy, there are a lot of these.
Is that where parenthetical insertion would come into play, delayed cadence?
Ooh, now, it depends kind of where you put it, but I'll put that in a separate category,
Okay.
'cause that's kind of a little thing. Now, sometimes these two are very close to one another. They can be. They don't have to be. It's gonna sound like it's an aside, like, okay, here's my main deal, but you know what? When you sort of take your voice down and you have a little aside to someone else, or you're a little bit conspiratorial in the way, you share some information, you change the way you deliver. Instead of full voice, you bring it down and you have something else. It's interrupting your normal discourse and doing something fresh. But then you pick up with your thought. So it's got to be set apart in some way. There's got to be articulation, funky chords, something that's disruptive about it, that sets it apart and makes it parenthetical. So here's your phrases going along, and you'll have something that's just extra in a very obvious kind of way. That's a good list. That's a lot of stuff. If we have more, we can add it in there.
Now, he had one, he talked about purple patch, but I could not for the life of me figure out what he was talking about.
But the
I
thing
read
is-
it about 8 times and went, either I'm missing a paragraph or.
Well, that's the thing, he starts talking about it and then he explains it. That's the thing, it's
I
like he
couldn't
talks about
follow.
it for a while, and then he explains elements of it. Because I was the same way, and then because he starts talking about it on page 88, I think, or even 87, and then over on 91, that first paragraph, he explains some of the elements of what happens
Right.
in a purple patch.
Does he use Jupiter, or was he?
Yeah, he's talking about Jupiter in that.
Yeah, on the next sheet, you have an example.
He says the typical purple patch occurs in the context of a major key and involves a harmonic region borrowed from a parallel minor.
Unfortunately, he only shows the purple patch, so you don't really get the context, but
Yeah.
that's a good example from the Jupiter there.
Do we need to know that?
Well, it's a
Or is that,
a word coined by Sir Francis Tovey, and he was very famous for the way he would write these really involved program notes. And he's had a way with words, and they've bound them. I mean, they are books now, just collections of his words on music. And he would just pick these evocative kinds of ways of expressing what's going on. And you kind of have to figure out if you're trying to tie the words to technical features, aspects of the music, you have to do some work sometimes. And thankfully, Rothstein did the work here and figured out that it has to do with parenthetical insertion a lot of the time, where it's like the progression gets derailed. And in particular, it's mixture, modal mixture that comes into play. So you think you're in major, and all of a sudden, whoa, we're in this other realm. We're in the parallel minor for a bit. And that creates what he thinks of as somehow purple. So if we set up some progression, so if I set up a context, and maybe I'll go to a, so you think I'm gonna cadence here, and I do something really crazy like this, and you go, oh, what's going on? And then maybe I throw in a Neapolitan and hang out there for a while, and then, okay, and now I get back on track and I'm done. Or maybe I need a cadential 6/4 to really make that, you know, to really make something out. But where I go to flat 6, all of a sudden you're in purple patch. And then you stay there a little while. But, you know, I'd have to really flesh that out and give you some sort of tune that makes sense, and then do something else, like this shimmering business with tremolando in the strings, you know. Change it somehow so that it's set apart from the normal
So it's
discourse.
not one particular type of cadence. It's just the idea of moving into a sort of a modal or out of the key.
Yeah,
sort of unexpected.
borrow stuff from the parallel minor. So instead of the normal 6, I was using this guy. So if I was playing in C, so that would be A flat. What's that doing? A flat major in the key of C. Well, it fits C minor. That's modal mixture. And where the progression seems to sort of gratuitously go off and hang out there for a while in its melancholy moment, that he would call purple patch. It's
Do you
interesting that
notate
it's
any way in
also in
analysis, or,
parallel.
like, do you notate it in the analysis at all as purple patch or not? I
You
mean,
could if you want.
Or would you just put what the chords were, and looking at it, we should know that is purple patch, so to
Well,
speak?
you might want to put that in prose and talk about how, hey,
Okay,
this,
if we
Toby
were
would have
writing
called
about
this
it or
a
something,
purple
but,
patch. Yeah,
okay.
but you don't have to be. It's not like
But
some
in analysis,
technical
you
term.
wouldn't, okay, well, I couldn't, I just read it and knew I couldn't understand
Yeah,
it.
it's a lovely term, and feel free to use it, but it's not like, it's not on a par with dominant or something like that. It's a little less, it's a little squishier, right? So far, it eludes
So
you,
that's what Prince meant.
harder to hold on to. Purple rain?
That's what Prince meant. He was really getting into the
I don't
theory.
know, that was a little bit.
Did you hear him on NPR talking to the songwriter that co-wrote the song with Adele about appoggiatura? He didn't know what it meant. But they were writing about the song that won Grammy of the Year, that the appoggiatura is this beauty, love thing that tugs at the heart. I've never heard I never knew that word till yesterday, he said, or something like that.
Oh,
So
really?
last week or whatever.
Interesting.